The biggest mistake salespeople make is not in their closing technique, it's in their discovery. You can't close what you don't understand, and you can't understand what your prospects don't tell you. Most prospects come into calls being guarded, skeptical, ready to give you the most surface level answers you've ever heard. But what if I told you there are very specific techniques that you can use that will turn even the most closed off prospects to ones that are opening up to you about all the problems they face? My name is Johnny Ma, and consistently I've been able to collect $30,000 to $50,000 a month as a commission-based closer. And I've learned that the difference between average closers and elite closers isn't just how they handle objections. It's how they get prospects to reveal information that makes closing them inevitable. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you why prospects hold back information and how to bypass that resistance, the specific questions that get past these surface level responses, how to create psychological safety so that your prospects feel comfortable being vulnerable with you, the listening techniques that encourage deeper listening, and how to use what they reveal to guide them towards a natural yes. Now here's the reality about discovery questions that most salespeople don't understand. Prospects give you surface level answers because they're just protecting themselves. They've been burned by pushy salespeople, so instead of giving you the answer they want, they become guarded and they use their ego to protect them and shield them from any sort of vulnerability they could possibly run into. This is where they're going to give you the sanitized responses like, yeah, we're just looking to get a little bit better, nothing's really going wrong. The problem is that most salespeople are going to accept these surface level responses and just continue on like they didn't even happen. And then they wonder why these prospects aren't engaged, and you get to the end of the call and it's like, did this person even listen to one word I said? The reason being is because you can't create urgency around problems that don't appear urgent. And you definitely can't close someone who hasn't admitted that they have a serious problem that they need fixing. And based on the systems I've used to consistently close over $300,000 a month, getting prospects to open up isn't just about the questions you're asking, but more so about how you can contextualize your questions to get them to want to open up to you instead of feel like they're being forced. So I'm going to show you these specific methods from my framework that cause even the most closed off prospects to open up to you on all occasions. Technique number one, tonality and cadence. Someone can ask the exact same question 5 different ways and get 5 different answers. So what that tells you is that it's not so much about the question you're asking, but more about how you say it. If you take the general amount of tones there are in a sales call, let's take curious, challenging, confused, and many more. Using these types of tonalities are going to get different answers out of your prospects. So let's take a base level question that we'll ask in every single sales call. What do you feel like you need help on? Now, depending on how I ask that question will depend on the answer I get. If I ask it in a challenging way, so what do you need help on? The prospect is naturally going to respond to me in a challenging way. They haven't thought much about the question and they feel attacked. Not only this, but my cadence was wrong. I didn't put any pauses. I didn't make them think. Whereas if I ask the question in a curious tone, now I'm getting the prospect to open up to me. Paired with this, I could also do things with my cadence like pausing strategically so that they actually want to open up. An example of this would be, so when it comes to like you getting, better at sales and stuff like that, I guess like, what do you feel like you might need the most help on? So at that point, the way that I'm asking the question is going to cause them to pause and actually think about what I'm saying. Not only that, but because I'm asking it in a curious tone, they're going to naturally have the emotion of curiosity. Now, each of these tonalities is important in different levels of the conversation, which is a really important thing to know as a sales rep. Technique number 2, the vulnerability effect. Another thing I can do with contextualization is being able to use what's called tactical vulnerability. Now, the reason this works so much is because usually when someone is vulnerable with you and tells something that's open about themselves, it causes you to want to be vulnerable with them and tell them about something about you. It's a lot easier to ask someone a deeper, hard-hitting question when you answer it yourself first. So let me give you an example about how this works in practice. So let's say I'm going into desired state and I'm trying to get them to answer a question, right? Something that's a little bit hard-hitting. Something like, okay, what is it you're looking to achieve? How would things be different at that point? These are fairly commonly asked questions. So when we ask them just like everybody else without any contextualization, they're going to feel like it's a sales tactic. But if I added in tactical vulnerability in the very beginning, it would sound something like this. Yeah, when I first got into sales, I was making around $30,000 a month, and the whole goal for me was I wanted to get to 10, 20,000 because I know this sounds like a crazy thing, but bringing my mom on safari was like extremely important to me. And that was one thing that really took me through from the very beginning to the very end, was having that thing on my shoulder like, hey, this is actually what we're chasing. So for you, I don't want to assume like, what is it that's actually like motivating you to do something about this? So at that point, if I would have just led with the question of what's motivating you to do something like this, they're not very inclined to give me the answer I want. Not because I did anything wrong inherently with the question, or maybe because my tonality was off. It's just because they don't see the reason why they need to answer it. So the whole thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give them tactical vulnerability so they feel obligated to give me an answer. By sharing my own story and what I want to achieve, they feel like it's almost an obligation to open up. Technique number 3, identity labels for better answers. Have you guys ever gotten onto a call with a high ego prospect, ask them what they need help on, and they say, I don't know, just about everything. And you could tell they have that energy about you, like, hey, I'm better than you. That used to happen to me all the time until I learned how to pull this technique. The best way to handle a surface level answer is to prevent it from happening in the first place, just like with objections. So what we're gonna do with these prospects who get on with us is we're going to reward the behavior that we want them to have. So for example, if I'm asking a question like, hey, what do you feel like you need help with? I'm gonna preface that with putting in a label on them. So what I'm gonna do is say, yeah, and thanks for being so straightforward. Like, I love getting on with people who actually know exactly what they need help with, because at that point we can just get straight into like the bulk of the information instead of sitting there and trying to like just like problem solve the entire call, which I really respect about you. So for you, like, what do you feel like you need the most help with? So right there, I rewarded the behavior of answering my question, which is gonna cause them to feel incongruent if they go and tell me they don't know what they need help with. Congruency is a very real thing with prospects. So for them to say something out loud, it's hard for them to go against that 1, 2, 3 minutes later. Technique number 4, reframes and analogies for deeper pain. What you'll run into when you're finding and building problems with people is that they don't necessarily understand what the impacts of those problems are. So this is what I like to do something called informed impacts. Let's say we're talking to an older business owner and we're selling him on, let's say, a content system. Now it's clear that an older business owner is not going to understand the impact of not having a content system. So what we want to do is something called informed impacts by telling them the impacts in a way that's in a question and then re-asking it so they give us the answer we want. Now this is just another form of contextualization. So this in whole is just, how do I get this prospect to answer the question the way that I want him to? So before I ask an impact question, I'm gonna go, yeah, and as you know, like with organic content, it's funny because you're actually getting paid to post, right? So you're not like going out there paying Meta and Google for all these ads, and it's more so like a negative ROAS instead of paying a ROAS. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, of course that makes sense. Okay, so like for you, the fact that you don't have that, what impact do you feel like that's having on, I guess, like your overall profitability as a company? So now I'm much more likely to get the answer that I want because I prefaced it with reframes. Now these 4 techniques that I just showed you all tie into how do we build trust with our prospect and get them to psychologically open up. My approach to building trust with every single prospect is just to show them the expertise that I have based on the level of questions that I answer. This is why being so articulate in sales is very important, is because your prospect will naturally respect you and see you as an authority. And when prospects view you as an authority, are they more likely or are they less likely to open up to you? They're obviously more likely. So that's the whole thing you need to accomplish, is how do I build maximum trust with this person by asking high-level questions that not many other sales reps do. The way that we want to do this is through contextualization, asking questions in a more specific way, using reframes and analogies to get the answers we want, using tactical vulnerability to be able to get them to open up. Now, implementing these strategies is going to be a little bit more difficult than just hearing them. It's easy to hear these and be like, all right, I'm going to go and do these on my next call. But the practice of it is a little bit different. The key to remember here is that tonality and cadence and contextualization are more important than the actual questions you're asking. I can ask someone the most hard-hitting questions in the world if I just preface it with tactical vulnerability or giving them a reason to answer the question. So focus less on the specific question you're asking and more about how you can dress that question up to get them to answer it better. If you found this valuable, hit the like button and subscribe for more advanced sales training. And as always, if you guys want to get more advanced stuff, that's more like 11 calls a week and doing like a whole A to Z course and everything like that, you can apply for coaching down in the link below. But other than that, I will see you guys on the next one.